The indictment alleges correctional officer Sergeant Antoine Fordham worked as a high-ranking member of the 8 Trey Crips gang, operating on the streets of Northeast Baltimore and inside several prisons. According to the indictment, Fordham authorized assaults on inmates, the shooting of a rival gang member, and the movement of drugs and contraband in and out of prison.
Baltimore police have arrested 9 men, part of what the commissioner called a major drug trafficking organization, the Wick Squad, that he says terrorized the 2500 block of Edmondson Avenue for months.
We believe this investigation helped.
The target was a gang. It was called the MURDALAND Mafia-style, or MMP. Members operated in Northwest Baltimore City and neighboring county neighborhoods. So Windsor Mill, Gwen Oak, Howard Park, and Woodlawn and Liberty Heights, that entire area.
Obtained court documents revealed the criminal enterprise operating out of West Baltimore's Princess Plaza on Edmondson Avenue called themselves ABG, or Anybody Gets It, a group responsible for CDS sales and multiple acts of violence in the area.
Maryland has been the focus of numerous high-profile gang takedowns in recent years as federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies intensify efforts to dismantle violent criminal organizations across the state. These indictments, spanning gangs like MURDALAND Mafia PIRU, ABG, Wick Squad, and the 8 Trey Crips, as well as motorcycle organizations like the Wheels of Soul, highlight the scope and complexity of gang-related crime in Maryland. The charges range from racketeering to drug distribution and firearms offenses. Some defendants received decades-long prison sentences, while others are still awaiting trial. Each case sheds light on the deep-rooted challenges Maryland faces when combating organized crime, but also demonstrates the success that can come from multi-agency cooperation and sustained community pressure.
Attorney General Anthony Brown has charged 33 people, ranging in ages from 21 to 54, connected to a violent criminal organization which Baltimore police say doesn't have an official name. Through their investigation, detectives recovered 9 firearms, 1 rifle. 2021 Baltimore City Police Department's Group Violence Unit and the Attorney General's Organized Crime Unit began investigating a criminal organization because of a noticeable uptick in violence in the south, southwestern, and western areas of Baltimore City. Investigators say the gang operated primarily in the areas of West Baltimore Street and North Bentlow Street, South Calverton Road and Frederick Avenue, and South Franklintown Road and Holland Street.
Baltimore City officials announced indictments against 33 individuals accused of operating a violent drug trafficking organization, marking a major milestone in the city's ongoing effort to reduce gun violence and overdose deaths. The investigation behind these indictments stemmed from a 2022 non-fatal shooting involving 2 of the suspects. Using undercover drug buys, wiretaps, and surveillance, law enforcement was able to build a sweeping case.
Baltimore police have arrested 9 men, part of what the commissioner called a major drug trafficking organization, the Wick Squad, that he says terrorized the 2500 block of Edmondson Avenue for months.
We believe this investigation helped to prevent shootings in recent months. And we anticipate that ballistics testing of the recovered firearms could potentially lead to other crimes committed by these individuals.
We were on the scene in July, shortly after a gun battle broke out in the middle of the day. More than 30 shots were fired along Edmondson Avenue. One of the 2 men struck by bullets had a young child with him at the time. Neighbors told us then they were frightened and fed up.
In a significant crackdown on drug trafficking and gun violence, Maryland authorities have dismantled the Wick Squad, a West Baltimore gang operating near the 2500 block of Edmondson Avenue. The investigation, initiated in April 2022 by the Maryland Attorney General's Organized Crime Unit and the Baltimore Police Department, employed undercover operations to purchase narcotics, leading to the seizure of 11 firearms, including untraceable ghost guns and substantial quantities of drugs. By November 2023, all 9 defendants had pleaded guilty to various charges, including firearm possession and drug distribution. Sentences ranged from 6 months to 5 years of incarceration, often followed by supervised probation. Attorney General Anthony Brown emphasized the state's commitment to holding violent offenders accountable, stating that such prosecutions are crucial steps toward enhancing public safety in Maryland communities.
Locations raided, 24 gang members indicted. Federal and local authorities worked to serve warrants just before you were waking up here this morning. And ABC2 was one of the only news organizations allowed to go along. The target was a gang. It was called the Murderland Mafia PIRU, or MMP. Members operated in Northwest Baltimore City and neighboring county neighborhoods. So Windsor Mill, Gwen Oak, Howard Park, and Woodlawn and Liberty Heights, that entire area lived in fear, authorities say. And right now, MMP ran drugs, they ran guns, they laundered money at Maryland casinos, and the feds have pegged 5 non-fatal shootings in the group, but think they might be responsible for at least a dozen more. And this morning, after the raids were conducted, the U.S. Attorney said this sends a message.
A member of the violent Murderland Mafia PIRU Bloods gang was sentenced to federal prison on Thursday. 28-year-old Devon Dent of Baltimore was sentenced to 14 years behind bars for racketeering and drug conspiracy. Prosecutors say he admitted that as part of his gang activities, he distributed and was present when a co-defendant attempted to victim outside a Baltimore nightclub.
I'm Denise Koch. A member of a violent Bloods gang was sentenced to 30 years in prison for racketeering and drug conspiracy charges related to his gang activities. 33-year-old Dante Gambino Johnson pleaded guilty to the charges earlier this year. He admitted to being a member of the MURDALAND Mafia PIRU, a subset of the Bloods gang. According to Johnson's plea agreement, the gang controlled the drug trade in large parts of Northwest Baltimore and Baltimore County. Johnson admitted that he fellow MMP member Antoine Ellis and Brian Johnson.
The Murderland Mafia PIRUs, a violent subset of the Bloods gang, operated in Baltimore and surrounding areas, where it became known for its brutal enforcement tactics and widespread drug trafficking operations. Formed as part of the nationwide Bloods network, the PIRUs adopted a hierarchical structure modeled after the Italian Mafia, with Dante Bailey, known on the streets as Gutta, Almighty, and Wolf, serving as the gang's top leader. Under his direction, the Mafia PIRUs asserted dominance over neighborhoods like Forest Park, Windsor Mill, Gwen Oak, Howard Park, Woodlawn, and Walbrook Junction. In 2016, a sweeping federal indictment charged 24 members of the Murderland Mafia PIRU with racketeering, drug trafficking, multiple deletions, attempted deletions, extortion, money laundering, firearms violations, and witness tampering. The federal government alleged that the gang ran highly organized drug operations in and around the 5,200 block of Windsor Mill Road, a known hotspot for narcotics activity that attracted customers from across state lines. The gang also used violence as a primary tool of control, eliminating perceived threats and retaliating against disloyalty with deadly force. Dante Bailey was ultimately sentenced to life in federal prison after being found guilty of deletion in aid of racketeering conspiracy, drug trafficking, and firearms offenses. His leadership of the gang was marked by ruthless enforcement of gang rules and personal involvement in gang-related violence. Another high-ranking member, Jamal Lockley, also known as T-Roy and Droid, received a 30-year sentence for his role in racketeering and drug conspiracies, including incidents of witness tampering and retaliation against those who cooperated with law enforcement. Shaquem Davis, known on the streets as Crips, was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison after he was convicted of racketeering, drug conspiracies, and firearms charges. Among his most brazen acts was a 2015 attempted double deletion, where he fired an assault rifle at 2 individuals in broad daylight, underscoring the gang's disregard for public safety. Trey Johnson, who went by Gambino, also pleaded guilty to racketeering and drug conspiracy charges. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison after admitting to deleting 2 fellow gang members, acts committed in response to their disloyalty and failure to pay gang dues. His confession highlighted the internal violence that often accompanies criminal organizations of MMP scale.
Newly obtained court documents revealed the criminal enterprise operating out of West Baltimore's Princess Plaza on Edmondson Avenue called themselves ABG, or Anybody Gets It, a group responsible for CDS sales and multiple acts of violence in the area.
These are violent drug organizations that are peddling poisons to our children, to our victims of addiction, and they are profiting from it, and then they're fighting over those profits with guns.
Court documents naming Daryl Robinson as one of the main players. In these charging documents, detectives detailing how undercover officers purchased crack cocaine from him, then later searched a home where he was arrested and found drugs, packaging materials, and at least one weapon. Court records also highlighting what the Baltimore Police Commissioner revealed last week.
Being prosecuted and they're back out on the streets. This is why we need collaboration and communication between City Hall and the law enforcement agencies, and I just don't know if that's happening.
Vignaraja questioning if this takedown will prompt permanent change.
I don't see...
Authorities in Maryland have executed a major crackdown on the violent street gang known as ABG, short for Anybody Gets It, resulting in the arrests and indictments of numerous suspected members. This multi-agency operation, led by federal, state, and local law enforcement, targeted individuals tied to a wave of violent crime and drug trafficking in Prince George's County and surrounding areas. Anybody Gets It is considered one of the more aggressive and unpredictable gangs in the region. Known for their no-limits approach to violence, the gang's name itself reflects their philosophy: anyone can become a target. Investigators believe Anybody Gets It has played a key role in shootings, attempted deletions, and distribution across neighborhoods in Maryland. The group also maintained ties to illegal gun trafficking, with firearms used in both street crimes and retaliatory attacks. The investigation into ABG was a long-term operation involving surveillance, undercover buys, informants, and wiretaps. Authorities began zeroing in on the gang after a spike in violence and overdoses. The evidence gathered connected gang members to numerous violent incidents, including drive-by shootings, armed robberies, and attempted assassinations of rivals. One case involved a shooting outside a convenience store that injured 2 victims. Another involved the seizure of over a dozen firearms, some modified for automatic fire, from 2 ABG associates. Community leaders and law enforcement officials praised the operation. A Prince George's County Police spokesperson described ABG as a group that operated with zero regard for life or law and stated that the arrests would bring much-needed relief to affected neighborhoods. Community members echoed the sentiment but emphasized the need for continued investment in intervention programs, youth outreach, and long-term support for families impacted by gang violence. While many of the accused are awaiting trial, some have already entered plea deals.
Prosecutors say this was a clash between 2 rival gangs that led to 9 people getting injured. It's a crime that rocked the capital city, and it's one that Attorney General Peter Neronha says shines a light on what may be contributing to a rise in violence. Now, 6 men between the ages of 19 and 26 were indicted this week following the months-long investigation into the shootout on Carolina Avenue back in May. 4 of those suspects, whose names you should see on your screen right now, will be in court today, with the other 2 set to appear next week. The Attorney General says there were more than 50 shots fired at the scene, and as part of the investigation, police tell us they seized more than 500 rounds of ammunition, high-capacity magazines, and multiple illegal guns.
Even with community cooperation, the investigation took 10 months. 2 of the 9 suspects are eligible for parole, and police say one of them lives in his car. Bullets disrupt a 4th of July party last year on Hard Park Court. 4 people, including 2 teens, were shot. They survived. This week, police arrested 9 Harford County rival gang members in connection with that shooting. They face charges of attempted second-degree murder, first-degree assault, and participation in a criminal organization. 2 are eligible for home detention. Police are concerned about the release of Jeremiah Brown. He's going to get out on home detention, but he has no home.
He has no home.
So he live in a car.
Living in his car.
And the judge is going to allow that to happen.
That's what the judge has ordered, home detention to a person without a home.
Authorities in Harford County, Maryland, have announced the arrest of 9 individuals in connection with a violent July 4th shooting that left 4 people wounded, including 2 teenagers. The incident, which occurred in the 600 block of her Park Court in Edgewood on July 4th, 2023, was the result of an ongoing feud between rival gangs. Deputies from the Harford County Sheriff's Office responded to calls of multiple gunshots around 4:12 p.m. 1 victim was found at a nearby convenience store, while 3 others arrived at local hospitals. All 4 victims survived their injuries. The investigation revealed that the shooting stemmed from a dispute during a holiday gathering that quickly escalated into gunfire. After a 10-month investigation involving community tips, surveillance footage, including video captured on doorbell cameras, and coordinated search warrants, authorities arrested 9 suspects. The suspects face multiple charges, including attempted second-degree deletion, first-degree assault, and criminal gang participation. During the execution of search warrants, investigators recovered 4 9mm handguns, illegal drugs indicative of distribution, and a large amount of cash.
It was called Operation Too Close for Comfort, a pun off the alleged location of the criminal enterprise, the Comfort Inn on Baltimore-Annapolis Boulevard in Brooklyn. According to Attorney General Brian Frosh, police started investigating the area in May of 2019. Their focus became centered around the alleged ringleader, David Brown, who lived at the hotel and at one time controlled an entire floor of rooms there.
He used these rooms for drug sales, to hide drugs, to hide money, and for the sex trafficking victims to use for what the gang called their dates.
Many of the women involved in this case were addicted to drugs themselves, and they were trafficked in the same way that the drugs were trafficked in this case.
Frosh says the hotel management was crucial in helping with the investigation, as the indictment says hotel staff members were alerting gang members if police were in the building or nearby. While we were shooting video outside of the hotel, a man who identified himself as a partner in the hotel seemed to deny any of the activities happened there. Staff members at the hotel would alert them when the police were around, and
No, nothing like that in this property, no.
No.
No. Actually, the hotel staff called the police if they found anything, if they saw anything was going on.
In a major criminal takedown known as Operation Too Close for Comfort, Maryland authorities dismantled a drug and sex trafficking operation based out of a Comfort Inn and Suites in Brooklyn Park and Arundel County. The months-long investigation led to the indictment of 15 individuals who were allegedly involved in a sophisticated ring that distributed narcotics and trafficked women. The Comfort Inn, located near a busy corridor, was used as the central hub for drug sales, storage of illegal substances and cash, and for facilitating commercial sexual acts. The operation was spearheaded by David Tico Brown of Baltimore City and Michael Anthony Copeland of Glen Burnie, according to law enforcement. Authorities allege that the two controlled multiple hotel rooms to conduct their business, using the space not only for drug distribution, but also to house and exploit women, some of whom were battling addiction, for sex trafficking purposes. Detectives with Anne Arundel County Police began investigating the case in May 2019. Over the course of 8 months, they documented hand-to-hand drug deals, observed suspicious activity, and tracked the movement of both drugs and suspected victims across Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. In terms of drugs, they recovered various drugs and over $27,000 in cash.
Tonight reveal another gang pushing drugs and violence behind bars in our state, and a pair of correctional officers heading up the enterprise. ABC 2 News' Jeff Hager has more on dozens of arrests in this case.
The 29-page indictment carries the names of 26 Crips street gang members, including 2 prison guards who served as high-ranking members of the gang. It's alleged they dealt in drugs, cigarettes, and cell phones behind bars. And allegedly at the very top of the Crips operation was Sergeant Antoine Fordham, a veteran correctional officer with 11 years of service.
He was basically running operations for the 8 Trey Crips up in the northeast section of Baltimore after work and then going into work and basically providing direction to many of the inmates.
According to the indictment, another correctional officer, Philip Jordan, also acted as a key facilitator in bringing in contraband that filtered through both the Jessup and Maryland correctional institutions, with the help of as many as 24 other gang members.
Several of them are mothers of folks who were in prison, and they were, according to the indictments, they were providing contraband.
But it was the ringleader, Antoine Fordham, who will now face charges in connection with a shooting in December here near the Frankfurt Plaza after another drug dealer failed to heed his warnings for trespassing on the 8 Trey Crips turf. As Fordham's stature in the gang rose, his ego followed suit.
He said that he told another co-conspirator in a recorded call, I'm going to tell you, cuz the route I'm going, they're going to have to build a statue out there with my face on it.
At this point, investigators haven't ruled out the possibility that Fordham and Jordan were members of the gang before securing jobs as correctional officers, and long before the prison system used polygraph tests to try to weed out criminal applicants.
2 corrections officers indicted for gang activity in Maryland prisons, part of a 26-person indictment announced today by the State Attorney General's office. The indictment alleges correctional officer Sergeant Antoine Fordham worked as a high-ranking member of the 8 Trey Crips gang, operating on the streets of northeast Baltimore and inside several prisons. According to the indictment, Fordham authorized assaults on inmates, the shooting of a rival gang member, and the movement of drugs and contraband in and out of prison. The indictment also states, quote, Antoine Fordham and James Careton discussed ambushing and Baltimore police officers in retaliation for the arrest of a member of the 8 Trey organization, end quote.
He bragged how easy it was to carry out the Crips activity, and on top of that, how adept he was.
8 members of the Crips gang are included in the indictment. The others are co-conspirators or people who helped move contraband, including the mothers of 3 of the inmates.
Fordham also faces an attempted first-degree murder charge after an assault on a former Crip behind bars when it was learned he was a homosexual in violation of gang rules.
In a significant breach of Maryland's correctional system, former correctional officer Sergeant Antoine Fordham was sentenced to 35 years in prison, with all but 20 years suspended, for leading the 8 Trey Crips gang while employed at the Jessup Correctional Institution. Fordham pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including conspiracy to establish and entrench a gang, participating in a criminal gang, committing a felonious hate crime, soliciting assault in the first degree, misconduct in office, and possession of a firearm in relation to a drug trafficking crime. The investigation, led by the Maryland Attorney General's Organized Crime Unit, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, uncovered a large-scale contraband smuggling operation within several Maryland correctional facilities. Fordham used his position to facilitate the smuggling of contraband, including drugs and cell phones, into prison facilities and authorized acts of violence to maintain gang discipline and control. A search of Fordham's residence uncovered an assault rifle, a handgun, synthetic Mary, and handwritten Crips manifestos detailing the gang's history and organizational structure. The investigation led to the conviction of 25 other individuals involved in the contraband conspiracy, including another correctional officer, Philippe Jordan, who pleaded guilty to smuggling items into Maryland correctional facilities. Among the indicted co-conspirators were 10 outside facilitators, including the mothers of 3 inmates who acquired contraband items and arranged payments, often using PayPal, to smuggle these items into the correctional facilities. The gang also perpetrated violence inside the jails. During the investigation, Crips leaders, including Fordham, ordered an attack on an incarcerated former Crips member because he was discovered to be homosexual, a violation of the gang's code. The victim was stabbed more than 30 times but survived. Additionally, 2 other co-conspirators were involved in a physical altercation with correctional officers who were trying to seize contraband that had been delivered to inmates as part of the smuggling operation. Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh stated, "On Fordham abused his position as a correctional officer to benefit himself and other violent members of the Crips gang. In a major multi-agency investigation, 21 members of the Wheels of Soul Motorcycle Club were indicted in connection with a deadly shooting that took place at the Room 301 Lounge in Waldorf, Maryland, on October 30, 2020. The violence erupted during a confrontation with members of the rival Chosen Few Motorcycle Club, resulting in the death of 34-year-old Dante Lowell Watson, a prospective member of the Wheels of Soul, and injuries to 3 others. The incident occurred as Wheels of Soul members entered the lounge, where the Chosen Few were attending a birthday celebration. A verbal altercation quickly escalated into a brawl, and then into gunfire. 4 individuals were struck, 2 from each gang, and Watson died later at the hospital from his injuries. Authorities launched an intensive investigation, which culminated in the arrest and indictment of suspects between June 29 and July 13, 2022. The indictments charged the individuals with first-degree assault, conspiracy to commit first-degree assault, and use of a firearm during a violent crime. During the investigation, law enforcement also seized more than 40 firearms, including 3 reported stolen. Those indicted include members from multiple chapters of the Wheels of Soul, with key figures holding leadership roles in Washington, D.C., Southern Maryland, Virginia, Baltimore, and other regions. Among the most notable were Jason Moore Smith, president of the D.C. chapter, and Delonte Brandon Weir, the D.C. chapter's business manager. The list also included chapter vice presidents, sergeants at arms, and affiliated members from surrounding counties. Wheels of Soul, founded in Philadelphia in 1967, and Chosen Few, formed in Los Angeles in 1960, are considered outlaw motorcycle clubs that self-identify as one-percenters, a term that reflects a rejection of mainstream law-abiding biker culture. Authorities have long monitored these clubs for violent behavior and criminal activity, and this case is the latest in a string of indictments targeting motorcycle gang violence. The recent gang indictments in Maryland reflect a broader shift in how the state is tackling violent crime. With a renewed focus on collaboration, intelligence-led policing, and long-term investigations, law enforcement agencies are dismantling networks that once operated with impunity. Each case, from the MURDALAND Mafia PIRU's ruthless operations to the 8 Trey Crips' infiltration of the prison system, demonstrates that no one is above the law, regardless of rank or influence. At the same time, these cases, the evolving nature of gang activity, no longer limited to the streets, criminal enterprises have expanded into hotels, correctional institutions, and suburban neighborhoods. Many operations involve coordinated trafficking of narcotics, weapons, and even human beings, pointing to the urgent need for continued surveillance, legislation, and public engagement.